So the Crimson Tide are coming off of a weekend where they hosted some of college football's top prospects, something we talked about before the weekend began. However, exiting the weekend, we've heard multiple reports that these prospects really enjoyed their time in Tuscaloosa. However, today, we need to focus on one prospect in particular, a top offensive lineman who really enjoyed his time, so much so that after he left, a crystal ball prediction was inserted in favor of the Alabama Crimson Tide to land the services of none other than Casey Poe. Something we have got to break down today. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe the Crimson Tide will land Casey Poe? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself, and both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, who is Casey Poe? Well, Casey Poe is one of the most gifted offensive linemen in the nation and one of the most gifted high school football players in the nation regardless of position. Specifically, he comes in as the number 144 player in the nation, the number 8 interior offensive lineman, and one of the top prospects in the state of Texas as he plays his high school football for Lindale, Texas. And Alabama would be very happy if they get him in. When you turn on the film, you're going to see a player that is ferocious at the point of attack, that has got a high motor, and has got a really high upside, a combination that I think Alabama fans everywhere will love to see. But one thing we need to acknowledge whenever we're talking about Casey Poe is that there are other players in this battle, such as Kansas State, such as Oklahoma. However, Alabama may have set the standard in this recruiting battle, and it's going to be something we have got to watch going forward. Because whenever we talk about the Crimson Tide and their ability to recruit offensive linemen, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Coach Wolford, a coach who personally I think has done a lot of good in the short time he's been with Alabama. We talk consistently about the state of that Alabama offensive line whenever Doug Marrone was the offensive line coach, and when he left, yes, there was an offensive lineman that went within the top 10 picks of the NFL draft, but top to bottom, that unit was in shambles. Coach Wolford inherited an offensive line unit that was in absolute shambles and didn't have a top 10 pick on it, and that offensive line showed improvement. I am really excited to see, now that he has more time under his belt, a greater understanding of the offensive line at his disposal and the ability to recruit his guys, what he's able to do. Because everywhere Coach Wolford has gone, you can see a statistical increase in the offensive line. They get better and better as the years go on, and I think that's a reason why so many in the Alabama fan base are so excited about the future Coach Wolford can provide that Alabama offensive line. Not long ago, we made a video talking about how that's the most important part for this Crimson Tide team. I know, quarterback is the sexy answer, and it's a good answer. I give you that. If you're asking me what's the second most important position, I completely concede it's quarterback. But in my opinion, because there's so much new everywhere, it's not going to matter who the quarterback is if he doesn't have adequate time to be able to make the decision. So everything starts up front with that offensive line. Furthermore, we know what Tommy Rees does as an offensive coordinator. He likes to run the football. You're going to need a powerful offensive line unit to be able to employ the scheme Tommy Rees wants to. So this is something we have to watch. But what about the other players in this? Kansas State is a team you can never completely write off. But what about the Oklahoma Sooners, a team that have been establishing a relationship with Casey Poe and his family for quite some time, and a team that up until this weekend probably felt like they were in the driver's seat to land the services of the very gifted offensive linemen right across the border in their rival state? Well, for Oklahoma, we need to understand that whenever Bill Bedenbaugh is attached to these recruiting battles, it is something we have to watch. Not long ago, I posed the question to everyone why Oklahoma doesn't have better results in recruiting offensive linemen, because when we look at the development they yield year in and year out at the offensive line position, it's actually insane how much success Bill Bedenbaugh has had, and nobody really talks about it outside the Oklahoma fan base. But this is an offensive line coach that consistently gets 4-star, 3-star guys, sends them to the NFL, and they just continue raking in millions in the NFL. Don't believe me? Go look at offensive linemen that have been coached by Bill Bedenbaugh and look what they're making in the NFL. It seems like every year I'm getting a headline that some offensive lineman that has ties to Bill Bedenbaugh has renegotiated their contract and they're now getting paid some absurd amount of money. It's an absolute trend, and on top of that, they just sent more guys to the NFL. Next year, they'll probably send more guys to the NFL. That's a unit that's been real strong for Oklahoma. It's been a really, really interesting unit to continue watching because of the development we've seen, but also because they haven't been able to pull 5 stars on top of that. Usually, whenever you see a program have this level of development, they're able to translate that into major recruiting wins. And I think one could argue that it's just stylistically, Bill Bedenbaugh knows what he's looking for, and so that's what he's going for. And if that's the case, fair play to you, because these coaches, they're the ones that are going to be working with these prospects. If Bill Bedenbaugh says, hey, I like this in my offensive lineman, he probably knows what he's talking about. But this is a situation we have got to watch, as Casey Poe does have a visit scheduled for the Oklahoma Sooners in July. Now, in fairness, like I said, he's already been able to establish a relationship with the Oklahoma Sooners and their coaching staff, so this visit in July could be one we've got to keep an eye on. But there's no mistaking this. Whenever Alabama comes to sit at the table, you're now playing a totally different game than you were prior. So if this was a 2-team race before Alabama got involved between Oklahoma and Kansas State, now you're playing an entirely different game. Because when Alabama finds a prospect that they like and they zero in, very tough for that prospect to say no. Something we're going to have to continue watching. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. I think it's very likely that Casey Poe ends up at Alabama. He loved the visit. We know what Alabama has done in developing offensive linemen. I gave that whole soliloquy about Bill Bedenbaugh and what he does developing offensive linemen, and that's all well and true. I think that that's important to note. But we also need to understand Alabama's development of offensive linemen is absolutely insane. I just told you about how when Doug Marrone was the offensive line coach and that offensive line was in shambles, they still sent guys to the NFL in the top 10 of that draft. They will continue sending offensive linemen in the first round of the NFL draft, and J.C. Latham looks to be the next in a long line of Alabama offensive linemen that have left the Crimson Tide and made it into the first round of the NFL draft. So if we're talking development, we also need to understand very clearly Alabama develops at such an insanely high level. It's why they find themselves in the midst of all these top-tier recruiting battles, because of the program they've been able to establish, because of the results they give on the field, and because of the results they give in terms of development. Something that has been absolutely fascinating to watch, but I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.